Hello, welcome back to Tower Thoughts from Rebellious Resources. My name is Raina. I am your host, and today we are going to talk a little bit about some astrological things that are going on and how we're seeing them reflected in current events and what the timing could be for how those things are going to continue to play out. So, if we've never met, like I said, my name is Raina. My company is Rebellious Resources, and we are here to disrupt money culture. If you're wondering what money culture is, well, take a look around. We kind of see it everywhere, and it's going a little banana balls at the moment. It's when a few people at the top have all the money, which really means power, and everyone else is underneath kind of struggling and scrambling and not having a good time. No one's having fun. Okay, money culture is only fun for a few, and we're going to democratize that. So, how do we disrupt it? Well, one is talking about the history and about money culture itself, how it got here, what we're dealing with today. Part of it is also education so that you can be part of the financial conversation. It does not need to be overly technical. It does not need to be exclusive to just a few who have fancy last names or fancy degrees. Um, and then I also use a bit of tarot and astrology, especially astrology. Why is that? Because astrology is when you're talking about mundane astrology, that's world events, happens in cycles, just as other things in history happen in cycles. And when we overlay the two, really interesting parallels start to show up. So astrology does not it's not a guarantee of what is going to happen. It does not remove any of our responsibility for dealing what's going on in these meat suits on this blue marble. We are very much responsible for how we go throughout the day. But what it can offer is a bit of insight, a bit of perspective to step back and go, huh, well, when this was happening at another point in history, did things were things going on that are similar to what we're dealing now? Were they just a different flavor of it? And that can give some insight to, well, if I do not like how things went, how can I be part of the change that we are being presented with now? And if I do like how they went, how do I drive it in that direction? So it's an insight. It is not it's not a decision maker. We are still responsible for managing the mundane. Um, but yeah, that's what we do. So I started this channel to talk a bit more. There are platforms where I write about it, but I wanted one where I could come in actually talk to you about these things, current events, politics, history, economics, bit of astrology, a bit of tarot, have some fun. I mean, look, we only get one turn on this marble and have some fun while we're at it, right? So, um, that's where we are. And today, what I'm going to talk about in part is what is going on in Minneapolis, which is really just a microcosm of what is being played out in multiple cities across the US. Um, but most visibly right now in Minneapolis, how that is coinciding with our Constitution and our democracy, and what lessons we can take from that. So, moving ahead, um, I have a few slides, so let's go ahead and get those up. Okay, so hopefully this is recording the way I want it to. Um, always takes a minute to get things positioned. So right now we are in Aquarius season, and If you attended our each solar season, I offer a resource forecast looking ahead. If you're a member of our Patreon group, um, and I think it's the Little Earthquakes tier and up, you get that as part of your membership. But you can also buy tickets on Instagram. We currently have the tickets available for Pisces season, which will be on February 15th. Um, but during Aquarius season, the Aquarius season workshop, we did talk about a few of these things, but some other things have kind of come up that I'm going to be adding in. So we are in Aquarius season that began on January 19th. And this is the chart for the start of the season. That chart is based on Washington, D.C. If you live somewhere else, that's fine. But since I'm talking about um, how this is impacting the US, I'm basing that in DC. So, as you can see over here, we have quite the cosmic conga line making its way from Capricorn, the season we just came from, into Aquarius. And at the time that Aquarius season began, both the moon and sun, our luminaries, were in Aquarius along with Venus. Since then, Mercury and Mars have joined them, and Pluto has actually been there for a decent while. So now it is, the moon has since moved on, making laps, but it's getting pretty crowded in there. So they just did a little pub crawl, meeting up with Pluto. Hey, how's it going? Um, this chart is interesting because it has a Virgo rising. Um, Virgo is a mutable sign. It's an earth sign, so very much about resources and being grounded, but it is the very practical, detail-oriented sign in the zodiac. And it is ruled by Mercury, so it's going to answer to this Mercury that at the time was still in Capricorn, just shy of 29 degrees. 29 degrees is considered an anaretic degree. It's the last degree of a sign before that planet or luminary changes signs. So it's considered a degree of crisis and decay. And if you look, it is just 3 minutes shy of that. So really bringing that 29-degree energy. What does that mean? Well, it definitely was telling us this was going to be kind of an intense season. Um, and to pay attention to the details, to pay attention to what we are being told, what is being communicated. Mercury rules communication. And in Capricorn, Capricorn is the sign of government. It's the CEO of the zodiac, but it also has a lot to say about government. So now, knowing what we know, today is what, the 28th? Today is January 28th. So now knowing what we know, we can kind of see how this has really played out. One other interesting thing to note, and by interesting, I don't necessarily mean good. So this Virgo ascendant is in a T square. It's also the south node. The Virgo current is the south node is currently in Virgo, is actually right on this ascendant. You can see here the north node in Pisces is right on the descendant, which is the cusp of the seventh house. And then right here in Gemini, we have our midheaven. And together, this is forming a T square. So oppositions, 180 degrees, what we have here, those are like the pull, the tug of war, their tension. When we have a square, like we have with the midheaven, think of it like T-boning. It's impact, um it's a challenging degree. How do we deal with T-squares? We look to that missing leg. And where is that? That is the IC, the foundation in Sagittarius. Um, so if you attended our resource forecast for Sagittarius season, we talked a lot about Sagittarius themes are all about freedom. You cannot fence in a Sagittarius, no matter how hard you try, and I don't recommend that you try. The US itself has a Sagittarius rising. It is now, we know history, founding of this country, how it was built, all of those are problems. Look, we don't shy away from that. I understand you might be new to us. Please take a look at our Patreon. Please take a look at our website. Please sign up for our free newsletter. We talk very honestly about real history. Um, but in the context of this Aquarius season, how do you deal with this T square, this push and pull, this friction, this compaction by going back to that fight for freedom? Maybe we didn't get it entirely right 250 years ago. Maybe we didn't get it entirely right 160 years ago. Every day is a new chance to do something better. And I feel like it's taking some time, but folks are getting that message. They're in the process. Some folks have had that message for a while. Some folks are never going to get that message. But in the middle, there's a huge pool of people who are going, oh, huh, I didn't understand this. I didn't think it was real. I didn't um, really grasp the concept. And now they're starting to. We can, have our opinions about why it had to get to this point for them to get there. And I certainly have my opinions, but that's not what we're going to spend our energy on here today. So, that said, when I saw this chart, during the Aquarius workshop, I named oh, well, you can't see it here for a second. Let me just move this. But I named the energy of this season the collective power to fight. Again, not knowing this is something that I wrote weeks and weeks ago, not knowing how current events were going to play out. But now that we know how they are playing out, it seems like I was a little bit on point there, wasn't I? I wanted to say the collective power to fight for freedom, but we only have so much space here. So this chart that we're looking at here is actually the chart for our Constitution, which is also the chart for our government. Now, if you're not familiar with mundane astrology, um, each person, we have a birth chart that is created at the time and place of our birth, which is why if you want to have your chart read, you need to have that information. But humans aren't the only ones that have birth charts. Businesses do, countries do, governments do, because sometimes a government and a country can have two different foundings. That is the case with the United States. So the United States generally accepted that the country as we know it was founded on July 4th, 1776, when we declared our independence from England. However, the government that we have is not our original government, and the Constitution is not our original founding document. Originally, when we declared that separation from England and wanted to set up a government, folks were very, very concerned with any sort of federal system, a strong federal system where power could be consolidated. They had just come from that, and they were in the middle of fighting a war about that. They did not want to replace it with more of the same. So the original founding government we had, the original founding document we had after the Declaration of Independence was the Articles of Confederation. That created a loose, a very weak federal government, a loose coalition of states. Most of the power was within the states themselves. You could liken it to a European Union, Eurozone type thing, and it did not work at all. It did not work. For a lot of reasons that we're not going to get into today, but moral of the story, folks at the time realized, hey, if we want this nation to succeed, if we do want to be a United States, we need to fix this document. And a constitutional convention was convened to fix it, but they pretty quickly realized we actually need to create something new. We need to rewrite this document. It is beyond fixing. We need to start over. That is how a very brief telling of how we got the Constitution. And so once that was written down, and there was a lot of arguing in that convention, but once that document was created and it went to the states to be ratified, it eventually was ratified and went into effect in 1789. So this chart here is the chart for our Constitution. And if you're looking at it and go, ooh, that looks a little dicey. Yes, it does. It does. It is a little chaotic, and I think it also seems to very appropriately reflect what went into creating this document, creating this new government. Um, so hold on a second. So talking about this for a second, the Constitution, and again, this is the document that also created our current form of government, which is why I use this chart for both the Constitution and the government. This chart is very, very active right now. It has a Scorpio ascendant, which I think is appropriate because, like I said, it was kind of created a little bit in secret, a little under the radar. Um, but notice how that north node is all about where we're going, is in Sagittarius. We are meant to move towards freedom. I know, I know. It has been a journey and we have not always succeeded, but we, the people that are here right now, we have an opportunity every day to do better. But what I want to point out also is that down here in Aquarius and actually in Pisces, but we're focusing on Aquarius for the moment, we have our natal Pluto, our natal Venus, and our natal Mars. Pluto is the planet of transformation, deep generational transformation. It tears down what is no longer working. It tests everything. It is also the planet of power, especially power being used in its shadow side, it's power being used manipulatively, oppressively, but it can also, if you harness that energy right, be power for good. It is associated with money, but especially wealth. Think about a plutocracy. And Venus, much lower scale, is a planet of money, beauty, partnership, relationships, our values. And Mars is the planet of, yes, police, military, war, but also action, leadership. It is also the planet of opposition. So this planet could represent a few different things. It could represent military forces that we're dealing with it, but it could also represent the opposition to this regime. Now, this is the natal chart, so for the Constitution. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let me roll that back. But our Scorpio has, if you work with modern astrology, and I do, Scorpio has two co-rulers. One is that Mars, which means it is really informing how this first house and this chart works, and the other is Pluto. Both of them are in Aquarius. Both of them are in that third house. And Aquarius itself is called the sign of the collective. It also has two co-rulers. One is Saturn, one is Uranus. There's Uranus up here, and here is Saturn down here. We're not going to spend too much time on them, but Aquarius is this um these two kind of conflicting energies that if you can get them to work together, they're amazing. But Saturn is about restriction, structure, it's about discipline, boundaries. Uranus is all about freedom, rebellion, innovation, those eureka moments, but it can also be associated with strikes, riots, protest, revolution. So, in their best expression, when they work together, we can find the structure and the discipline to be innovative, to rebel against whatever we want to rebel against, and to to come together. Aquarius is also about social justice. It is very much a sign of community. It is a sign of coming together. So when you have both of your chart rulers in that sign and knowing that the Constitution, literally, it is we the people. We the people are entrusted with the power and the responsibility to nurture this nation forward. Um, I think it's just amazing to see. This is one of the reasons why I love astrology so much, to see when history and circumstance align with the astrology. I doubt that any of the framers were looking at the astrology of this, and certainly they could not predict when the Constitution would be ratified and actually go into effect. That was just up to a higher power, if you will, and yet it has so beautifully come to represent on an astrological level what the framers actually intended for this to be. And yeah, there's a lot of chaos in here. We have these are quincunx aspects. Those are really irritating. Not going to focus on them today. But what I will talk about is this chart is one I'm working with a lot right now. A lot of folks are looking at the US natal chart, which goes back to that July 4th, 1776 date. And yes, I'm looking at it, but this is the one that is super duper active. Why? What do we have going on here? Well, transiting Pluto, so the Pluto that's moving all around in the sky right now, has just moved into Aquarius. That means that the US government and the Constitution and the collective, we the people, are going through a Pluto return. As the chart ruler, this is having a huge impact on this document, on our government, and on citizens. We are also going through a Venus return because Venus is currently in Aquarius. We're going through a Mars return because Mars is in Aquarius. We are just finishing up a Saturn return. Saturn is finally about to get out of Pisces. It has been there for too damn long. Um, but That was a Saturn return, which Saturn in Pisces is awful for a government, in my opinion, but whatever. We are going through a Jupiter return. Jupiter is currently in Cancer. And we are about to go through a Mercury return because Mercury is in Pisces. Right now it's in Aquarius, but it will be moving into Pisces and it will be there for Mercury will go retrograde while in Pisces. It will be there for a very long time. Mercury usually moves it along. It won't be doing that this time. That will be a separate video. I'll talk about that at some point in the future. The sun is, we're also going to get a solar return because the sun natally is in Pisces. And at the end of Aquarius season, what's the sun going to do? It's going to move into Pisces. And last but not least, Neptune just moved into Aries. Neptune was in Pisces for, what was it, 14 years, 16 years? I don't know. It felt like a century. Um, I have to go back and look at the exact dates, but now that Neptune is in Aries, it is going to be making a whole sign opposition to its natal Neptune, which is in Libra. It won't be exact for quite a while, but it's still that energy that, remember, oppositions, 180 degrees, tug of war, pull, tension, that's going to be happening. So those are things I'm not going to get too deep into today, but just wanted to point out just how active this chart is. And when you look at the news, whether that is on your TV, traditional newspaper, whether that's on your phone, scrolling on ye old interwebs, you can see just how much um, our government, our democracy, our Constitution is being tested on a daily basis. I have theories about that. We're not going to get into them at this exact moment. So moving on, wanted to take a look at exactly where Aquarius season, which is those transits that are happening right now, where they are hitting on this chart. So remember I talked about there is that T-square of the nodes and the ascendant and descendant and then the midheaven. So this is where that all is landing. And if you look through where is that opposite point, it's in the Sagittarius first house. We are very much being challenged to answer the question, who are we as a nation? Who are we as a people? What does freedom mean? What does democracy mean? Um, and that, remember I said that there was a cosmic conga line moving through. All of that is landing right here in the second house. Now the second house is, I realized I actually did write notes and I don't know if I've checked any of them. So I'm going to do that for a hot second here because I want to make sure that oh yeah, it does look like I've been covering everything. So yay. Um the second house is all about money, our resources, but also our values. So you think about how do we use money? Well, money is a social construct. It is something that we as a society have decided has value, and it can be exchanged for the things that we want to have in our lives, the things that we value. Now, most of the time, that is something like roof over your head, food on the table, healthcare, education, clothing, necessities, but then you might also decide that you value books, you value art, you value music, you value travel. And those are the things that you would save up for, or that you might value having a secure future. So you invest in a retirement or something, real estate, something to prepare for the future. So that's what the second house has a lot to say about. Um, Now, also going to point out that money as we know it has actually changed over time, specifically currency. What currency looks like, how it is used, who has access to it. Um, this is something we're actually going to cover if you're watching this before February 4th. We're covering this in our Financial Literacy 101 class, which, just like the others, it's part of our Patreon at the Smash It Up tier, but also you can get tickets on Eventbrite. If you miss it, I have been putting the replays up, so you will be able to purchase that on our Patreon. But we're going to be talking in that class about the new age of currency because what is considered to be currency, how it is used, and who has access to it is changing more swiftly than a lot of people realize. And the Project 2025 technocrat oligarchs want to change it dramatically in ways that I guarantee you most of us will not enjoy. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And in the interim, I would encourage you to go ahead and pay attention to how gold prices, silver prices have been going up, 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 and the dollar has been going down, 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 down. But anyway, don't want to get too distracted. Anyway, um, what I think is interesting about this. So we have all of these planets moving through our house on money. And you think about right now um we have spending bills in front of Congress that potentially could trigger if they're not passed by this weekend. And there is now a decent chance that some of them will not be. That could trigger a partial government shutdown, not full, because many of the funding bills have already been passed, signed. They are funding agencies, but some of them may not be. We'll see how that goes over the next 24 to 48 hours. Additionally, we are talking, so the Fed chair just announced that today that they are not, Jerome Powell they are not going to lower interest rates because they are watching the balance between the Fed has a dual mandate to maintain maximum employment and also to keep interest rates at what they have deemed the acceptable level, which inflation is about 2%. Excuse me, I said interest rates, I meant inflation to be about 2%, and it's been a little bit higher than that. So they have decided they are not going to adjust rates right now. They want to see how their previous rate drops are going to continue moving through the economic system, because it does sometimes take a few months to really see how it all plays out. Um, but the other thing that I'm looking at, so Uranus is one of our outer planets. It is a slow mover. Uranus has nowhere to be anywhere fast, despite being a planet of sudden change and rebellion. It is going to take its sweet time getting there. Where is that? That is currently right on our descendant for the government. And you think about, well, we have had sudden changes and volatility to our committed partnership. Seventh house in mundane astrology is about our committed partnerships and our open enemies. So you think about the nations we have called allies, we have been friends with for decades. There's a sudden change to that. Um, don't expect any of that to calm down anytime soon. Would like to think it will, but um, this has been a real disruption to who we call our partner and to also who has become an open enemy. And the other thing I wanted to point out, oh yeah, here you are down here. So the, yeah, so the moon that is transiting right here, um, is pretty much conjunct that natal Pluto. This is another reason why I said this season is really about finding the collective power to fight. The moon in mundane astrology is the planet of the masses, of we the people, the collective. And in the sign of Aquarius, the collective, it has that extra supercharge. But not only that, it is pretty much conjunct that natal Pluto. Pluto is the planet of transformation. This is why I think this time, this season, was going to be transformational for how we, the people, see what's going on, react to what's going on, stand up to what's going on. I know that some folks have thought, oh, well, it took the death of a white man to make that happen. Maybe it did. I think whatever was going to happen during the season was going to be transformative. And so maybe that is what it took. I don't know. I know that um I think a lot of folks have been not knowing how to speak out, and this isn't justification. I think it's just reality. Folks have been confused. They don't know what speaking out looks like. They perhaps don't have a good role model, a good a lived example of how to react in these times. And it's been a bit confusing. Um, the fact that all of this is going down in the third house, which is the house of communication, I think we're going to see much more dramatic communications from people. Um, and that Pluto is also pretty darn close. I mean, the moon was a little bit away here, but pretty darn close to that Venus too. I think folks are realizing, hey, our partnerships matter. We want to spend time doing the things that we love. We want to spend time cooking good meals, being with our friends, having making art, reading, enjoying life instead of having to defend our nation against federal agents, allegedly. I don't know, they keep wearing masks, so we don't really know who the entire fuck they are. Um, but when you put all of this energy together, we, the people, are getting very, very loud and we are want a transformation. There's no soft, gentle appeasing right now. So, this is some of the energy that is going on. Now, I want to move ahead to, okay, talking a little bit more about how this, cosmic pub crawl is moving through this chart. So when we talk about these transiting planets, with the exception of Pluto, which is another super duper slow mover, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius, friends, just so you know, it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. Um, and we're only 1 year into it. It moved in November of 2024. Yeah, yes, November of 2024. Yes. And pretty much right off the bat, declared this is the work we're gonna do. So, you got 19 more years of this. And actually, when I was talking about Pluto and Aquarius a couple of years ago, because the US as a nation has a natal Pluto in Capricorn. When Pluto moved into Capricorn, we had the banking crisis, and Capricorn has a lot to say about government, but also about business. So, yeah, so financial stuff. It is the CEO of the zodiac. When Pluto moved into Aquarius, excuse me, Capricorn, it was like kicking the door down, like, hey, we're going to talk about money here. And that is exactly what happened. We had the financial crisis. We had to have a hard look at how our banking system is run. and how it exploits people, putting in protections, creating institutions like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, all of which are now under threat because of this, because of the Pluto has moved into Aquarius and is hitting our constitution and government very, very hard. But a couple of years ago, when Pluto was still in Capricorn, and I was talking about that and talking about its move into Aquarius, I had said, I can't tell you when, and I can't tell you how. But when Pluto moves into Aquarius, the constitution that we have at the start of that transit will not be the one that we have at the end of it. There are many ways that can go. The way I would like to see it go is not throwing the whole thing out because there is a tremendously valid framework that already exists. But this Pluto transit is showing us where it needs to be shored up, where, okay, these were things that the framers could never have imagined. Or they did, but they thought the people, because you can have the strongest framework you want, ultimately it comes down to who stands in each of those spaces to hold that framework together. We, the people, failed. These people like, Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 and the Oompa Loompa and Eyeliner Elegy, all of these people, Miller, the Half Pint Hitler, they always exist. Always. They are here to test the fences. And plenty of times they that test we have passed. Passed enough to keep them from rising to power. Not passed enough to truly create an equitable nation for everyone. But now they have been able to not simply get a foothold, but to rise to the top of every single branch of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, to rise to power in industry, to rise to power in education. We, the people, have failed for whatever reasons, and we are going to have to take a close look at those reasons and figure out where the gaps were. Um, but that is a bit of why we are going through this. Um, to see if we pass the test of, do you really want to be a democracy? Because democracy takes a lot of work and it takes constant work. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, one more tea. So, with the exception of Pluto, our little cosmic pub crawl here of um, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun are all they're moving, they're pretty quick movers. They're all going to conjunct one another. And conjunct means when they're occupying the same degree of the same sign at the same time. So on um and actually all of them kind of passed Pluto by because Pluto was already in Aquarius, like, hey fam, nice to see you. Oh my gosh, you gotta go. Okay, give me a hug before you leave. That's what the conjunction was like. On January 19th, Venus, transiting Venus, was conjunct Pluto. On January 22nd, Mercury was conjunct Pluto. On January 23rd, the Sun was conjunct Pluto, and yesterday on January 27th, Mars was conjunct Pluto. So the two malefics were meeting up. And if you have been paying attention, which I'm pretty sure you have, you know that the events of this weekend are really, really ramping up. Mars is about opposition, but it is also about police, about military, about war. And Pluto is, I heard someone describe it as a tsunami at the speed of a glacier. Um, so when you think about those energies occupying the same degree of the same sign at the same time, that is really, a bit nuclear. And that is certainly what we are seeing ramp up with, unfortunately, the shooting death of Alex Preddy. Um, I hope this is the last fatality. I think that is wishful thinking. Um, and we know that he is unfortunately not the only person who has lost his life. There have been, obviously, we know about Renee Good, the mother who was shot in her minivan. There was Keith Porter, who was not a protester, but was shot by an off-duty ICE officer on New Year's Eve, December 31st. And it was, I think, somewhere in California. I think it was San Diego, but don't quote me. He was allegedly out celebrating New Year's Eve and perhaps discharged his weapon. I do not know if he was registered gun over, but allegedly discharged his weapon into the sky to celebrate, was not, from all reports I've heard, was not pointing it at anyone, and was shot by an off-duty ICE officer. That is um quite a reaction. That is quite a reaction. Maybe what he's doing was not legal, but there are certainly non-lethal ways to handle that, and that didn't happen. We have also heard reports, and I'm blanking on the names right now, but of people who have died in detention at these ICE facilities. So there is already a death toll associated with this regime. Um, I believe it was reported that last year 25 people died in ICE custody, which is the highest year it's been in a long time. Um, I don't I would love to think this is as bad as it's gonna get, but I'm realistic and I'm a historian, and I know that oftentimes it does get worse because the lesson must be indelible. The lesson must be one that is not easily forgotten or replaced or dismissed, and it must last for generations. But I would like us to be able to prove that wrong. Anyway, the other thing that is going on is that all of these transiting planets, and again, eventually transiting Pluto will get there, but not anytime soon. But Mars, Mercury, the Sun, Venus, they are all going to transit over our Aquarius, natal Aquarius stellium in this chart for the government. And so what do those dates look like? Well, some of them already happened. Mercury already transited the natal Pluto on January. No, no, that's the future. Sorry. Um, these are all coming up. So Mercury will transit natal Pluto, which is at 18 degrees Aquarius, on January 31st. Venus will follow on February 1st, the Sun on February 7th, and Mars on February 16th. This is the one I think these are the dates that we really, really need to pay attention to. Because again, Pluto is that huge cataclysmic energy. We can also take these things, like, they don't need to be bad. You take a look at how people are channeling the power to fight and not fight in a violent way, but to fight creatively with music. Bruce Springsteen just released a song today, and you're like, a song isn't going to solve anything. Hey, you know what? Artists always help us through these moments. That is why regimes go target artists first because they bring us joy, they make us think, they give us a rallying cry. Art is rebellion. Art is medicine. Um, but we can channel that power, that transformation for the greater good. How that happens, I do not know. We are just going to have to see. But then, um, we're going to have a bunch more conjunctions with natal Venus. So Mercury will be there on February 2nd. These, I think, are going to be about our relationships, our money, our values. Pay attention to what happens on these dates around those topics. Uh, Mart, Mercury will conjunct natal Venus on February 2nd. We'll have a Venus return on February 3rd, which okay, let me get back to that in a second. Venus return on February 3rd. The sun will be there on February 10th, and then Mars and Venus will meet up on February 19th. And then natal Mars, this is where I think we're going to get into some more friction. Natal Mars is at 28 degrees of Aquarius. So Mercury will be conjunct the natal Mars on February 6th. Venus will hit that on February 9th, the Sun on February 17th, and then we have a Mars return on February 28th. I'm not pulling up any of these charts right now. I might do that on a future um on a future YouTube thing. Video. That's what it's called. Okay. You can tell it's getting getting a little bit late. Um, so the point is this chart will be extremely active in the Aquarius energy all the way through the end of February. And we're going to have some significant conjunctions. So looking at this one right here, Mars meeting Pluto on February 16th, Mars meeting Mars on February 28th. That is big banana balls energy. Um, what is interesting is we also have a full moon coming up on February 1st. That is a full moon in Leo. Full moons illuminate. They bring things to light. They are a great time to launch something into the world. So if you want to launch a program, full moons are fantastic for that, but they can also illuminate. So take a look at where that will happen. That will be right when Venus is transiting Venus is conjunct natal Pluto. Those are both money planets. Could we hear some big news about money? Now, again, that is also when we could potentially have a partial government shutdown. Um, that one thing I want to point out is that while one of the House bills that is currently being disputed does cover DHS funding. It covers many other agencies like the IRS, like FEMA, things that are really important. I understand why people want their senators to oppose this bill on principle. I'm not telling you that's right or wrong. What I am telling you is that currently DHS, thanks to the one big bunch of bullshit bill that was passed last year, DHS is funded allegedly through 2029. They got a big ass bunch of money back then. So whether the government shuts down or not, whether this funding bill passes or not, they're gonna keep rolling. What Congress can do, because Congress does have the power of the purse, Congress can rescind that money. Now, it would again have to get through the House of Representatives, it would have to get through the Senate, and it would have to be signed by the president. Or it would have to be veto proof that if he vetoed it, they could still put it into effect. That is a bigger conversation, but that money can be rescinded by Congress. But whether the current bills pass or not, whether or not we have a partial government shutdown, which would hurt government employees, many of whom are career employees that are focused honestly on just keeping the government going and providing the services. They are not um they are not partisan employees. Their job is to take care of the institutions that are in place. And regardless of who sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they would be hurt. We, the people, would be hurt. So I understand why that is being floated. I'm not saying whether it is the right approach or the wrong approach. I am just saying what it won't do is stop the bullshit that's going on in Minneapolis, that's going on in Portland, that's going on in Chicago, that's going on in Maine, that's going on in multiple cities in California, and that's going on in a number of other cities across this entire state. Perhaps not to the level or to the visibility that we see in Minneapolis, but it is still going on. And that will continue whether these bills pass or not. So, also looking ahead, am I? Oh, yeah. That's the other thing. As these move around, right? Do I have this here? Yes. They are going as this little pub crawl, the cosmic conga line moves its way through and gets to the end, gets to that Mars conjunction. What is it going to do? It's going to create a square with this Uranus. So, could we see more tariffs? Don't hold your breath. Or maybe hold your breath. I don't know. I would think that is a very realistic possibility, because Uranus is currently in Taurus, which is a money sign. Um, we could see some additional disruptions to the economy. I don't know how it's going to all play out. All I'm saying is I'm looking at how planets are lining up and how they're talking to one another, and we have some intense conversations coming up. We have some disagreements coming up. How we navigate that will remains to be seen. And also, this is something I'm not going to go into now, but just remember this conga line, they're all, with the exception of Pluto, going to move very quickly through into Pisces, where we will also be then making conjunctions to Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury. That is for a future video. But just moral of the story being the next few months, especially, are going to be very intense. They can be powerful. They can, if we can harness that energy, they can be amazingly transformative. It is not saying, oh, we're absolutely going to um devolve into civil war. Folks, I hate to tell you this, but civil war is already here. It has been here for a long time. It just does not look the way you expect it to, at least not at this moment. Um, but it has been here. Um, anyway, point is that there are going to be some intense energies coming up. So this is not moving out, in the next week. Nor should it be, because, you know, we got some big problems to solve. Um, And also the transiting nodes, like I kind of talked about, right now they are on um they are currently on the words are hard. The transiting nodes and the ascendant descendant of Aquarius season are on the midheaven and IC of the Constitution. That means that the midheaven and IC of Aquarius season are transecting the first and seventh house. So all of that is creating a whole sign grand mutable cross. That's a tough energy. I have one natally. It is mutable signs are all about change. And when we have a grand cross, that means all four of those signs are activated. So we are in a season of change. It is not disappearing anytime soon. Um, get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So. And then the last thing I want to talk about, these are just going to move really quickly, but we have upcoming lunar phases. And I mentioned we have this full moon coming up on February 1st. That is at 13 degrees Leo. This will be making some big old conjunctions to a certain Oompa Loompa oligarch's chart. So watch, I don't know who's in charge of cleaning the ketchup and hamburgers off the Oval Office walls, but get yourself some extra rags. It's gonna be feisty. Um, Also we have, where am I talking about? Oh, here we go. In 2 weeks, we have, no, 2.5 weeks, we have a solar eclipse, new moon solar eclipse at 28 degrees Aquarius. Where is that? That is conjunct the natal Mars in the US Constitution's chart. So that is that is going to be super active. Let me just go back to the dates here. And that will also be, yeah, I knew there was one here. So that will also be when the sun is conjunct the natal Mars. Um, And the moon will actually be there too because it's a new moon. So the sun is the leader, the moon is we the people, Mars is Mars. I would say these are going to be big energies. I cannot tell you how they will play out. But what I want to look at a little bit to illustrate how these can play out. So these are the lunar phases that we are dealing with this upcoming month. But they're also part of what are called lunar phase families, which instead of a new first quarter full and last quarter moon happening roughly 7, 8 days apart, each one of these is part of a longer arc. And let's go, here we go. So the lunar phase family is when the moon hits the roughly the same degree of the same sign 9 months apart. But it will be a new moon, and approximately 9 months later, we have a first quarter moon. Approximately 9 months later, it's a full moon. 9 months after that, we have a last quarter moon. So these are great to work with. I use these for if I have a big project that I want to handle that I know I'm not going to get done in a month, I will tap into the energy of a lunar phase family to try to make that happen. But I want to illustrate one here, um, and that is the one we just had. So this weekend, Sunday, was the first quarter moon at 6 degrees Taurus. So that is the second phase of a lunar phase family that began on April 25th, 2025, with a new moon at 7 degrees Taurus. Now, new moons are the time of planting. So what is being planted isn't always visible. You think about you stick a seed in the ground, it's under the dirt. You don't know where it is. You don't see what it's doing until it pops up above the ground. You're like, oh, hey, there you are. Well, that would kind of be like the first quarter moon. But sometimes we do, on a mundane level, have the ability to look back and see where those seeds were planted. And we do with this moon. So I went back and I looked like what are what was happening on April 25th, 2025, or thereabouts? Did anything come out? Well, sure as shit it did. This is a screen cap of article from USA Today that was dated April 25th, 2025, and it states ICE planning dramatic detention expansion as it tries to deport 1 million people annually. What did we see happening this Sunday, January 25th, 2026? But the implementation of said dramatic detention expansion. Um, and so I thought this was a great example to show how these lunar phase families can work. And so in this article from April of last year, talking about the intention to escalate the number of private contractors it uses to help track, manage, detain, and deport people living illegally in the United States with an eye-popping potential price tag of more than 45 billion over the next several years. That is the money I was talking about that was in the big bunch of bullshit bill that they passed last year. These fuckers are already funded. So the White House, Stephen Miller, has set a goal of removing 1 million people annually, making good on President Trump's campaign promise to conduct the largest deportation operation in history. And just so you know, they are already exceeding the numbers of detained personnel that the Nazis had in their concentration camps at the height at I believe it was 1939, which is when they began those concentration camps became death camps. And actually I wrote about that on Patreon. It's a free post. Please go over there to Rebellious Resources. You can find us on Patreon. We have three paid tiers and a free tier. You still get really good information with the free tier. Shameless plug. Um, But back to this article, among the newest moves are a $72 million no bid deal, no bid, to hire a team stacked with former federal officials to fingerprint, DNA test, and retina scan detainees, help maintain intake paperwork, and track down high priority targets, freeing up immigration and customs enforcement agents to conduct more arrests. Now, something to note is that many protesters have reported being detained. They're doing perfectly legal things. They are filming. They are blowing whistles. They are standing on the sidewalks. They are still reporting being abducted, being detained, taken to these centers where they are fingerprinted, where perhaps their devices are confiscated, where their information is being recorded. Does this sound familiar? We're seeing the implementation of the thing they literally told us they were going to do. So if you're still surprised, if you're still thinking this can't happen here, bitch, it is. It's happening here. It has been happening here. They didn't feel the need to hide it. So any ignorance of this at this point is a fucking choice. Choose differently. Anyway, ICE officials said that they don't have the time to hire federal agents fast enough and will be able to redeploy more than 650 existing agents once the private contractors come on board. ICE has 6,000 agents plus additional support staff. Now, they have a whole bunch of people who do not seem to be trained in actual law enforcement, who do not seem to be trained in actual protocol. Um, One thing that perhaps you've noticed, I've certainly noticed that I think is very interesting is that all those J6ers, all the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, they've been really, really quiet. Now, I would expect them to be showing up in Minneapolis and cheering on these ICE agents, but we haven't seen them. Or have we? Notice how these alleged Customs and Border Patrol agents, DHS agents, ICE agents, you know, n name a fascist by any other name is still a fascist. Um, Notice how they're all keeping their faces covered. Notice how they're refusing to identify themselves. They don't have badges. They don't have name tags. I don't know about you, but I think that's sus as fuck. And I think it doesn't take a whole lot of context clues to figure out why that is. So, anyway, um, that is, I think, oh yeah, this was just the Mars-Pluto conjunction, um, which you can kind of see the event itself, is really concentrated in the sixth house, which is all about our daily life. And what are these assholes doing? They are disrupting our daily life. People just want to go to work. They want to go to school. They want to go to the goddamn grocery store. I just read an article where people have been detained and abducted from cemeteries. Like, what the actual fuck? Um, so, there's, we have to ask ourselves, how do we allow this to happen? Because it didn't happen in a silo. Um, there have been numerous checkpoints that have failed. Think folks are realizing it. I hope it's not too little too late. I don't know. I can't tell you the future. I just know that we, anyone who's not taking it seriously, um, what the hell is your problem? So anyway, yeah, just so coming up, the usual, give us a like, share, follow if you thought this was interesting. You can find us, our website is rebelliousresources.com, and we have links to everything there. You can sign up for our newsletter, which is free. We have two classes coming up, and you can find us on Patreon, Substack, and Blue Sky. Still exploring a few other what are they? Social sites. We'll see. So hold on one second. Da, da. Hi, can you do the thing I'm asking you to do? All right, so that was it. I hope you found that interesting. It probably went a little bit longer than I intended, but this is our first real go at it. So yeah, I hope you found that interesting. Again, this is Tower Thoughts with Rebellious Resources. I hope that you will join us, and we'll see you again soon. Stay safe, pay attention, and let's save democracy.